What's up, guys? It's Greg. Welcome to the Wednesday, March 25th, 2026 episode of Beliefs, Ballots, and Bets. We're going to talk a little bit about everything from faith and family and politics and current events to sports and gambling and everything in between. Glad you're here, and let's get started with today's show. Going to talk a little bit about character versus image. I think we're all aware of the difference between those. Your character is who you are at the core, who you really are, and what God called you to be, versus your image, which is what you put out for public consumption and what you try to convince others that you are. Image is rarely real these days, and more people, unfortunately, focus way more on creating a certain image and trying to convince others to think or feel a certain way about them. And we spend very little time focusing on our actual character, the things at the core of us, our integrity, what makes us really who we are. The question we all ask ourselves sometimes, and I don't know that anybody really thinks about it the way they should, is who are you when nobody's watching? Who are you when you are all alone and you're really being true to yourself and true to who God called you to be? What are the things you enjoy? What are the things you think about in those moments where you're quiet and reflecting just on your purpose in life and the bigger things? The Bible in 1 Samuel verse 16 or chapter 16 verse 7 says, "Man looks mostly at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks inward at the heart." I think this is something we should all focus on. We ask ourselves all the time, like, what is our calling? What are we supposed to be doing in this world? And I think the more simplified question is, if you could ask God, what's his opinion of you? What would he say? Like, clearly when God created you, he had a purpose in mind. He had a future in mind for you and a path that you would follow and things that you would accomplish and behaviors you would exhibit and all these things. He had this pre-planned for you. But the good Lord also gives us free will and allows us to make our own choices. And the choices we make say a lot about our character. Are the choices we make choices that God would be proud of? Are we fulfilling the calling that he laid out for our lives? Are we working on our character, or are we working on our image? Given the choice, if you've got to choose a priority between opinions, let's try to focus more on making God's opinion of us what we want it to be, as opposed to that of the rest of the world. So as we leave and we close up this topic for the day, let's really focus on spending more time focusing on the things that matter, getting in our Bibles, finding out what God's calling us to be, spending time in prayer, listening for his calling on our life, listening for his input, listening for his guidance. God has a plan for you, and I promise you, it is far better than the plan you have for yourself. If you will live in his truth, live in the truths of what he called you to be, and not what this world calls you to be, and not always what feels good, but the things you know are true about yourself, your real character, not your image. Focus on the character, not your image. All right, guys. Now, you know, one of the fun things we do, we always talk a little bit about some sports and some current events and things of that nature. We dial in a couple of bets each day when we release a show, and we've taken a little bit of a break, kind of wrapped up after the weekend of March Madness, and didn't have a real good day Sunday. We went 1-2. Obviously, not what we're looking for, but we had after a couple of days off and some clarity. We got some college basketball rolling back up today. I feel pretty good about a couple of NBA plays, and we're going to get our MLB model dialed in with today being opening day. But let's cut to the chase. Let's go ahead and get to today's plays. Matchup number one, with college basketball. We got Illinois State and Dayton matchup tonight. Got Dayton minus 7.5 is the current line. I like Illinois State in this. Give me the 7.5 points. Give me Illinois State plus the 7.5. Dayton likely wins this game, but I think Illinois State will keep it close within a possession or two. I think they cover this 7.5. I think Illinois State will keep this within 3 or 4, maybe even a one possession game with a chance to win it at the end. Take Illinois State plus the 7.5. I like this play a lot. And we'll roll into the NBA for a couple of plays. Got a couple of home dogs that I'm liking. OKC at Boston. Give me the Celtics plus the 2.5. It's in NBA's is a lot of volatility. But the model really like Boston. I like Boston at home. I think they've been playing pretty well. So give me Boston at home plus the 2.5. And then in another marquee matchup, we got the Houston Rockets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Give me Ant-Man and the T-Wolves at home. Again, plus a short number. I think it's 1.5. Take them on the money line. I think the T-Wolves win at home. It's likely that the 1.5 point won't come into play. So if you can get a nice plus number on the T-Wolves at home, take them money line and let's get a plus money W. So we'll recap the plays today. We got Illinois State plus 7.5 against Dayton in college basketball. And then we got the Boston Celtics plus 2.5 at home and the Minnesota Timberwolves plus 1.5 at home. So those are the plays for the day.